over these past 3 years for probably 10 hours, but I wanted to condense my findings into a list of 10 things that I feel like other people should know about. Whether you are thinking about going to therapy yourself, or maybe you're just going through something right now, or maybe you just came here to listen to me whisper until you fall asleep. Whatever it is, I hope that you take something away from this video. So, the clock is already running. Get out your notebooks because I am about to drop so much wisdom on you. And I want to preface this by saying one last thing, which is that not all of the things on this list are things that I am good at. In fact, the very first thing on this list is something that I am still really fucking bad at, so that's why I wanted to start with it. I am only human. Anyways, number 1 on this list is talking about your problems isn't enough. Now, this isn't really a therapy-specific thing because I'm sure all of you know somebody who talks and talks and talks about their problems like there is no tomorrow, and yet for some reason never seems to actually do anything about them. We all know a person like that, right? Sometimes they are the most annoying person on the face of the planet, which is why it pains me to say that I have been this person in therapy at least 50 times. And it's because of this one unfortunate truth that I feel like best describes what I'm talking about right now. Making decisions is not the same as taking action. Let that sink in for a second. The reason this has been so hard for me is because I love to think, and I love talking about my feelings, which I know is not the case for everybody, and that, in fact, for many people, is the hardest thing to do. Get to a point where you're comfortable enough to talk about what you're going through. However, whether it's really easy for you to talk about your problems or really hard, we all end up in the same position, which is that you have to go and do the shit that you talked about doing. I can't tell you how many times I have come to my therapist with the same exact problem and walked away at the end of the conversation with the same exact solution and not actually implemented it. And it's because sometimes making a choice in our heads feels like doing the work. It's like when you tell yourself that you're going to go to the gym tomorrow and you feel good because you decided to go, and that was a difficult decision to make. It's intimidating and it's not easy to go. And then you don't go. Thinking about stuff and deciding stuff is not the same as going and doing the actual thing. You have to go and do it, or none of it matters. It doesn't matter how many therapy sessions you go to. It doesn't matter how many conversations you have with your friends, or how many tears you shed, or how many walls you punch holes in. Unless you go and do the shit that you say you're gonna do, you are getting nowhere. And I believe that is what they call accountability. Accountability. Why am I saying that weird? Accountability. That's it. I think you kind of get the point of what I'm saying. Do the stuff you say you're gonna do. Not only will it help you solve your problems faster, but it will make you more confident in yourself because you are somebody who can actually go and do things, and that is not something that a lot of people can do. So, number 2. Okay, so I just finished the rest of the video, but I did such a bad job explaining number 2 that I am actually coming back to redo it because I want to do it justice. I think it's important. So, number 2 is this. Be very, very careful about who you let give you advice. Because most advice, as I have found out over these past few years, really shitty. This goes for everybody, whether it's a self-proclaimed TikTok therapist, or one of your friends, or a school counselor, or some random person that you meet while you're blacked out at a bar that you get into a deep conversation with. You really need to be considerate of what you are listening to and then acting on when it comes from other people, because not everybody has your best intentions. In fact, more often than not, when people are giving you advice, they are doing it selfishly. And I don't think they always do it with the intention of being selfish, but sometimes people tell you either what you want to hear, or what they think is smart, or what they wish they could do themselves, or any number of things that are ultimately not what is best for you. And this is really difficult because when you're going through something, you're really vulnerable and you're looking for answers. And so when you hear something that sounds nice and is dressed up pretty in a bow from somebody else, you really cling on to it and want to use it because you're so desperate to get out of the position that you're in. I have unfortunately taken bad advice from, my God, literally so many people online in TikToks who have just said some stupid shit that at the time I thought was life-changing. And then I would take it to my therapist, and I still do this, and I would show her the video, and she would stare at me like I had lost my fucking mind. And truthfully, it's probably because I had, but this is hard because it really just involves trial and error and using your best judgment. But I think if you can't go to a professional like a therapist or a psychiatrist or whatever, I would just, if somebody gives you advice on something, I would ask this set of questions. And my camera's about to die, this is so fucked. But what is the motive of the person who's giving you advice? Are they doing it because they genuinely care about you? Or, you know, if it's somebody online, are they selling you a course, and so it's kind of part of their job to stress you out and make you think something is wrong with you so that they can turn you into a customer? Are they trying to benefit from the situation themselves? I had somebody who I used to be close to tell me to stop talking to my girlfriend when we were talking purely because she didn't like her. That's just a good example of somebody trying to fuck you over while disguising the advice as something that would help you. Next thing I would think about is the fact that depending on who you're getting advice from, this person lacks context on you and your life and your problems. If you watch a TikTok with somebody telling you how to deal with your relationship issues or stress or problems at work, whatever it is, it's a one-way conversation. This person doesn't know how you act. They don't know your past. They don't know how you deal with problems. They don't know your goals. They don't know your friend group or family or romantic situation. They know nothing about you. And so why would they be so qualified to tell you what to do with your life? Maybe there is a reason that they are, but you need to find a good reason that you should be listening to a person when they tell you what to do. And last but not least, it doesn't take a therapist or a psychology student to know that people are very biased in what they listen to. And I'm speaking for myself purely here, but I listen to the things that I want to hear. When somebody tells me to do something, I'm usually more receptive to it if I was already thinking that I should do it myself. Because, yeah, I want somebody to confirm that my idea is good. So, just be so ridiculously careful about who and what you listen to, because if you make yourself available to advice from everybody, you are susceptible to problems that can be caused by anybody. And once you lose control of that and are letting other people influence your life, it can be a very scary and disastrous thing. Okay, moving on to number 3. There is nothing more frustrating than being upset or stressed out or angry, whatever it is. And when somebody asks you what's wrong, not being able to describe what you're going through, it feels like you are stuck in some sort of vacuum. And it's awful. And I think that this is something that everybody needs to learn how to do. And I think there are a couple ways to learn how to do it. The reason I put this on the list is because something that I've noticed really helps me be able to not only explain my feelings, but actually understand them, is journaling. And I know that that is such like a buzzword right now, like, oh, you need to be journaling, you need to practice like mindfulness and writing, but I cannot overstate how much just writing about whatever I'm going through has helped me become able to understand what I'm going through. When you're depressed or anxious or pissed off, your mind is a storm, and you've got a million thoughts and feelings flying across the canvas of your head at any given moment, and learning how to sift through those things and decide which of those are important to look at further and which of those you can let go of is so important, because otherwise everything feels like the end of the world. Every thought feels exhausting, every emotion feels draining, everything feels so intense and overwhelming that you don't know where to start. Start by journaling. And if you don't want to write, if you don't like writing, I would suggest, if you have a laptop or even just a phone, turning on a webcam and just talking to the camera for 10 minutes. You don't have to show it to anybody. You don't even have to save it. You can delete it when you're done, but learning how to express your feelings is very important in being able to process and understand them. And I just think that a lot of people tend to let themselves get overwhelmed and just disintegrate when they're going through something, when I think they could very easily write or talk to somebody and just push through it and figure out what it actually is that's bothering them, because oftentimes it's not even the thing that you originally think is pissing you off or making you sad. So, just some food for thought. Number 4. Self-improvement is an addiction, and you can overdose. I know I made that sound really dramatic and intense, but I feel very passionately about this subject right now, which is that self-improvement is kind of toxic past a certain point. Because no matter how many therapy sessions I go to, or how many miles I run, how many workouts I do, how many times I change my diet, how many times I get in the sauna, how many difficult conversations I have, whatever it is that I do that falls in the category of self-improvement, it is never enough. And why is that? It's because once you fall into this, I would say, spiral of trying to get better, there's no end. Because when you wake up in the morning, no matter what you did yesterday, no matter how fast you ran, or how clean you ate, or how much you journaled, or how much reflection you did, or how long of a walk you went on, you can always do more than that the next day. And that is simultaneously beautiful and tragic. It's beautiful because you can always get better at things, and it's tragic because it feels like it's just this never-ending process. And lately I have found myself wondering, am I ever actually going to be okay with myself and just enjoy how far I've come, or am I always just going to be comparing myself to what I did yesterday or last week or last month and tell myself that if I don't improve today, that I wasted a day. Or worse yet, I got worse. It's difficult. And I don't know the balance. I have a very hard time being present. I'm just very obsessive and honestly compulsive about trying to get better at everything. And yes, that's great because it gives me some kind of purpose, but when am I just going to be happy with something that I did? Anyways, number 5. Respect is everybody's least favorite word and most important asset. I'm going to take a quick drink of water before I get into this one because I am extremely into this idea right now. Okay, so I have had a lot of conversations with you guys in the comments of my videos, and I feel like we're all pretty similar. And so I would imagine that you guys might be similar to me in the sense that the word respect has never really meant that much to me. Whenever I was growing up and I would hear people say like, oh, I deserve more respect, or oh, respect is so important, I would always kind of just roll my eyes because, like, I don't know why, it just felt like some stupid thing that people said when they felt like they weren't being treated fairly. It felt like almost prideful or something to hear somebody say that they deserve more. I have since very painfully come to learn that respect is probably one of the most fundamental parts of any relationship, including the one you have with yourself. And the reason I learned this lesson is because I got into an insanely massive argument with somebody who was close to me a few months ago. No, it was not my girlfriend, but this person was so unbelievably disrespectful and shitty to me during the fight that we got in that at the end of it, I actually finally understood why people were so obsessed with respect. Because I walked away from the fight having been very respectful myself. And that made me feel great because I had always told myself I was the kind of person who could treat others with respect no matter how they were treating me. And yet I was also so disappointed with myself because I let somebody treat me in the ways that this person had treated me and spoken to me. And where I think that I really understood this is the fact that if I can't hold other people in my life to a certain standard in terms of how they can talk to me or act around me, then how can I do the same things for myself? And really that's where the problem has been, is being respectful towards myself. And that's come in the form of trying not to be so critical of myself and doing the things that I say I'm gonna do because I respect myself enough to be a man of my word. See, these are all things that feel so cringy and like not me when I say them, but I'm starting to get why people are so into this idea of respect, because it's basically setting standards for your life with both you and other people. And I think that in the past I have done an absolutely god-awful job of holding people to a certain set of expectations on how they can treat me and how I can treat myself. And as a result of that, I have had a very low opinion of myself. And again, I think if you're like me and you're very self-conscious and can get easily insecure, it's easy to just let yourself talk to yourself however badly you want to and let other people walk all over you and just kind of accept that things are the way they are and almost feel like a victim. But that is not a fun life to live, and it's been uncomfortable for me me, but demanding that, it's not demanding, but just being stern about your boundaries and what you're willing to tolerate from other people is very important, because it sets the stage for how you think about yourself, and it's a very subconscious thing, but I think it's been very front of mind for me lately. So I had to retake that second point, and so I think I'm about 20 minutes in right now, and I've got 5 more things to go through, so fuck. Okay. Number 6. Therapy is a microcosm. This is a therapy-specific thing. And I actually did not come up with this myself. I got this from a book called The Gift of Therapy by Dr. Irv Yalom. I think that's how you say it. So this is for people who are either in therapy or thinking about it, or even if you talk to friends about your emotions. I would take this into consideration. Basically, a microcosm is like a situation or scenario that is like representative of the larger universe around it. So when I say therapy is a microcosm, I mean that how you talk to your therapist and the ways you behave, or replace therapist with friend, how you talk to somebody else and the ways that you treat them and interact with them is usually very representative of how you act in the real world. Why this is important in therapy is because I think that if you are considering going, or are already going, you owe it to yourself and your therapist to be honest and upfront, and most importantly, be yourself, because a good therapist will recognize your habits and your thought patterns and the ways that you act, and they will understand that these are probably things that you do outside of therapy in the real world as well. I think this is also useful if you have like a really close friend or family member that you usually go to for things, because it kind of relates, like, think about it from the other side, as if you were the therapist or the best friend or the boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever. Somebody comes to you and talks about their problems. Maybe they come to you like once a week. You will start to notice that the things that they are complaining about or struggling with are also things that they exhibit while they are talking to you. Maybe they are very insecure, so they apologize a lot, and then they talk about how somebody at work doesn't respect them and walks all over them, and you can see right there that, okay, this person is very apologetic and very much a people pleaser, and they also have problems in the real world with pleasing people and being taken advantage of. So it's kind of therapy specific, but I would just encourage you to be yourself when you are talking to somebody that you are trying to confide in, because that is how they will most effectively be able to help you, but especially if you're going to go to therapy. Number 7. Create more than you consume, and you will be a happier person. This is just a personal philosophy I have, but something I've noticed is that when I feel like I spend more of my day consuming content, like listening to podcasts or watching TikToks or reading articles, than I spend like making things or working on things, I feel like it's a net negative, and I feel like the life force is being drained from me. And I think that creating is a very loose term, because it could mean so many different things. It could mean going to the gym and creating the kind of body that you want, or making a video, or writing in your journal and turning your thoughts into words. It could be building a desk, or cooking, or painting, or having a really good conversation. I think conversations are extremely creative. They're this beautiful dance between two people where the two have to play off of each other and make something and I consume. I want to be somebody who adds things to the world, not just takes things from it. And if you are more emotional and sensitive, I think this is something that could be very beneficial for you. So, yeah. Okay. Number 8. And this is something I think I've mentioned before, but the goal is peace, not happiness. So, the first time this concept was introduced to me was actually one of my first therapy sessions. My therapist asked me on a scale of 1 to 10 how happy I was, and I sound like a, loser when I say this. I feel like I do at least, but I said, honestly, I'm at like a 2 out of 10, maybe a 3 out of 10. Like, I feel terrible all the time. I feel totally hopeless. I am convinced that nothing is ever going to change, and that this is going to be the rest of my life. And my therapist said, okay, that's fine. I understand. That's why you're here. And I think a good goal to set for your time here would be to get you to a 6 out of 10 or maybe a 7 out of 10. And I remember sitting there when she said that to me and looking at her for at least 5 seconds and just thinking to myself, oh my God, my therapist is a dumbass. I cannot believe that a licensed professional mental health counselor just told me that the best I can do is be a 6 out of 10 on the happiness scale. Like, is that not the entire point of life? Is to try and get to a 10 out of 10 and be as happy as we can be? How could you even think that I would want to just be a 6 out of 10? I legitimately started thinking that I was going to have to email the practice and ask for a new counselor because that was so fucking ridiculous. And then she said what she said, which is that the goal is peace, not happiness. And this is one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard because it makes so much sense. We all know what happiness is like. It is beautiful and joyous and exhilarating, but above all, it is fleeting. It's very temporary. It is gone before you know it, and it is so hard to get back. It is so hard to sustain. It's impossible to sustain. But I think that being at peace and being relaxed and just content is not only far more achievable, but just sustainable. There are few better feelings than waking up in the morning and just feeling at peace about things. Yes, it would be great to feel super excited and just enthusiastic about what's coming up, but I think feeling chill about things is very underrated and very beneficial. So, oh my God, I think I've got like 2 minutes left. Number 9. There is nobody like you, and that is the best and worst thing ever. It's the worst thing ever because sometimes it can feel like nobody understands you, nobody can relate to you, and nobody can truly empathize with what you're going through, and it feels very isolating, and it's awful. But once you learn how to deal with that part of it, it's the greatest gift ever because there's nobody like you, and that gives you the ability to do things that nobody has done, to say things that nobody has said, and to be things that nobody has been. And that is where you are going to find your happiness and fulfillment. Number 10. There is nothing more comforting than somebody willing to listen to you wholeheartedly. That has been the best part about going to therapy for me. Having somebody who is willing and able to listen to my problems without interrupting, without making it about themselves, without having to cut the call short or conversation short because they're busy, and while also being additive and making useful suggestions and giving valuable insights. There is nothing like it. And so if you have a friend or family member who is like that, tell them that you love them more than anything because that is so rare. thankfully I have those people in my life. But if you don't and you are able to afford therapy, I would recommend it purely for that reason, because feeling heard is one of the greatest things you can experience. Okay, I think that about does it. I might be a little over my time, but I think I got it all in about 30 minutes, so let me know which, if any, of the things on that list resonated with you and why. Or if you have anything you want to add or suggest that I think about, please do. I always love to hear what you guys have to say. And with that, I love you guys. I appreciate you. I hope you have a great rest of your night or day, whatever time it is. And I will see you soon.